Hey, what's happening, y'all? Welcome back to the Media Goose channel. It is I, the Media Goose, your friend Ryan, RJG. And the goose is loose, baby! I am coming at you today with the first episode of my podcast, The Goose is Loose. I'm going to focus on telling my story, my life, really. I've realized that I just kind of started posting content and I haven't shared a ton about myself. I have the video series, What Theater Means to Me. I've done 2 parts of that. Go check them out if you haven't already. That goes into my life as a theater performer, how I got started in theater, and it's going through my life in segments through my theater experience. The next one I'm going to film is my college time. So far, I did my first video was my origin story with theater, how I got into acting, how it was a punishment. The second video was my high school time. I went to a tech school, so I was a theater major for all 4 years that I was in high school, and I talk about that. I talk about all of the different experience I had being a theater major, and I talk about how, despite some tragic, sad parts of life, I have had a privileged experience in theater because I've had more opportunities to learn than a lot of people. And I'm really grateful for that. But theater isn't all that I am. My name's Ryan, and I just want to start sharing who I am. I've always kind of figured, I'll get famous one day, and then I'll get invited to be on Stavi's World or Are You Garbage, one of these other podcasts. So I just decided today I'm starting my podcast, and I'm just going to start telling my story. I'm going to eventually start having guests on, and I don't really want too many parameters. If I don't have a guest, I'm going to talk about me, my life, and I'm going to share stories. I'm a storyteller. I've often wanted to do stand-up comedy because I love storytelling. I love in group settings just sharing experiences. That's what humanity is. If we all just existed on our own little island of our own experiences, that would be kind of boring. And I'm not waiting anymore. I've spent a lot of my life waiting for somebody to come hand me something because I think that I'm owed. And I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to start telling my story. I'm going to start treating myself the way I want others to treat me. I think that I'm a really awesome person. I feel like I've been the main character my whole life. And I don't want my world to end, my life to end someday. And I never tried to tell my story. And with the way the world is right now, I don't think any of us can be sure what tomorrow holds and if tomorrow will ever come. That's kind of the state of the world we live in right now. So I'm just going to start telling my story and hope that it empowers others. Maybe somebody sees my videos and wants to get me involved somewhere. Come on my podcast, share your story. Maybe talking about acting gets some actor or some producer to reach out. I don't know. I'm also going to start doing Monologue Monday, where I try to post a monologue every Monday. I see so many people with platforms doing things that I don't respect. So I'm going to start building a platform for myself and hope that it little by little starts to raise. I also started doing more with YouTube because theater, there's a lot of factors that go into theater that I'll never be able to control. People who walk into a room and automatically get whatever part they want. people who have connections you didn't know about in the months that you spent preparing, and then you walk away with nothing. It's happened too often for me, where I've been the most talented person at an audition and got offered fat guy number 2 in the ensemble. I don't have to accept every role I'm offered, and I'm not anymore. I so love theater so intensely, but I can't continue to try to get something out of theater that isn't there. A fair chance. I saw a show recently that fortified my belief in myself and just how good I was. And I'm glad that I did, because I know my value now. And it's been a long journey. I'm 32. And I've been in therapy. I've had anger management. It's been a lot, this life. And I want to start living. I got sober like 6 years ago, and that has been enough for a long time, and it's not anymore. My sobriety is back. Now I want to start living. It's not enough to just be alive and sober. I want to thrive. I want a chance at all of the things I see people less deserving and less talented than me getting. These people getting cast from doing podcasts, like, respect, take the opportunities you get. I'm not going to hate on you, but I also can't expect going to theater auditions to be the way I finally get my chance. It's not going to happen. I had somebody tell me, one thing I'm not going to do, I'm never going to badmouth theaters and tell you who it is. I've worked in a lot of states. I've worked in no less than 3 or 4 states for theaters. And I'm not going to badmouth companies. That's not something you'll ever see me do here. And if I do, it's because they crossed a line that I don't think deserves them being protected. But I don't want to continue to let theater to be my only outlet. So creating this YouTube page and just starting to share my story, this is me taking back some amount of control and power. I've been afraid to share my story for a long time because it makes me vulnerable. It's a really individual experience being a foster kid, and I can point to once or twice in my life where I said, I'm a foster kid, or I was a foster kid, and somebody said, me too. It's not a shared lived experience, so I didn't feel comfortable sharing that it was my experience because it was always so isolating. And I've realized now that time in foster care shaped me. I'm going to go back to the beginnings of Ryan now. I lived with my mom, my dad, and my sister in Bayonne, New Jersey. And we had kind of like a normal life. My mom was a nurse in the emergency room. My dad worked for the state, cutting down trees and that kind of stuff. We had a house. And we had everything we needed and wanted. I never wanted for anything. We had enough. And looking back, I've come to realize that being the youngest, being the baby of the family, I was very protected. So I didn't know when things started to go poorly. I didn't know. I was naive. I was the baby. And as a kid, the way I remember myself, I was like that gifted kid. The kid at school who loved school. I hated the weekends because I wasn't allowed to go to school. School was everything. I got honor roll every marking period, kindergarten, first, and second grade, which I'm assuming isn't that impressive. But when we talk about what schooling became for me, I think it's important to mention that when I was really young, I did really well. I got honor roll every marking period and was proud of it. My dad would always tell a story where when you're in kindergarten or first grade, they have those presentations, those like assembly days where everybody has to like go up and say their name and their dream job and their parents' names and all this stuff. And other kids come up like, "Hi, my name's Michael," and then I come up and I'm loud. And my dad tells a story where I walked up to the vice principal who was like hosting everything and said, "Hey, if you need anything, man, let me know. I'll take care of you." It's like a 5-year-old. I always loved people. I remember surprising people with how much I was like talkative as a kid, but with adults. Like I don't know, I always enjoyed having conversations with people and just learning about who people were. And when I say like the gifted kid, the first fights I got into were defending girls who like a boy was pushing them on the playground, and then I jumped in. Usually got my ass kicked, but I was defending a girl, and that's who I am. I've often felt isolated from my childhood, like I didn't have access to it. And in the last couple of years, going to therapy, getting on Adderall, and like my mind being actually regulated, I have access to memories that I haven't had access to in a long time. I felt so separated from the life that I lived growing up because I only knew how to see it as trauma. But getting to go back and experience my life from the place that I'm in now, I'm so grateful. I kind of thought I had lost worthiness, like because I had been a drunk for 6 years, because I dropped out of college. I was never going to get to remember those times as punishment. I had forfeited my right to them. Part of getting sober was deserving that again, not running from the trauma, wanting to confront it, remember it. We also had my cousin Robin who lived around the corner, and she had her mom Joanne and my uncle Pat. And I just remember them and my family as a unit. We also had my grandpa, my mom's father, and his remarried wife, Mary. Everything felt normal. Looking back at that part of my life, I have such rose-colored glasses because when I ended up in foster care, everything went to shit. And everything before that was like heaven. The normalcy that got taken away. I remember all of us, my mom, my dad, my sister, Robin, my aunt, and my uncle, jammed into our living room playing Galaga, Dig Dug, Pac-Man, packing in to watch movies together. I remember when I went to school, I must have been pre-K, where I'm the media goose, so obviously I love movies. I talk about movies a lot. When we get closer to Halloween, I'm going to do a lot of horror movie reviews. And my love for that started when I was in pre-K. During nap time, the like older kids that were like watching would go over to the other side of the room and watch horror movies, usually like Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'd always be watching, so they'd eventually just invite me over. Like, come on, you're obviously not scared or sleeping, so just come watch. And that like developed my love for horror movies. I'm kind of trying to figure out how I want to do this. But getting back, I was talking about my family unit and the family dynamics. Me, my sister, and my cousin Robin were like a trio. We were three best friends. My sister fucked with me a lot because she was the older sister, but she also protected me when she had to. And the three of us had each other. We were inseparable. And God, there's so many stories from when I was young. I remember one time, my Uncle Pat, everybody in my family are addicts, alcohol. The women are better, but the men, my Uncle Pat drank a lot, and so did my dad. But one time my aunt and cousin came around the block to like hang out with us while he was on one, and he came to our house. And my dad's a boxer. I have my Golden Glove boxing gloves in that little case back there. And anytime I ever saw my dad have to fight, dude could throw hands. My uncle, who is like 6'4", and my dad, who's shorter than me, like 5'5", he comes up to the house and he starts slamming on the door. And the girls are like hiding, and I'm peeking, trying to see what's about to happen. And my dad's like, Pat, just go home. It's all right, brother. You're gonna be okay. Just go home and sleep it off. And he starts calling my dad a leprechaun, telling him he's short, and he goes to hit my dad. My dad just with one move gets out of the way and bah! Cracked him right in the nose. My big ass uncle falls out the window and gets stuck like in between the two houses. It was insane. My dad, I love my dad. I looked up to him so much as a kid. He's a little shorter than me. He's got a big beard. He's like a biker. That's his vibe. He's got tattoos everywhere. I looked up to him so much as a kid. I remember going to bars with him, and he'd be hanging out with a bunch of bikers, and to keep me occupied, they'd bring me a big bowl of cherries. I was known as the cherry kid because I just hammer down cherries. We lived in Bayonne, New Jersey. Bayonne. It's all very... I think my uncle worked on the docks and everything. Like it kind of felt, in my own head, it was a little Sopranos-ish being in Jersey, and my dad always hanging out with bikers, and we were very Irish, our family, and Irish and Italians feuded back then because white people are idiots. The Italian and the Irish, two dumb cultures fighting. But I remember just loving Bayonne so much. You could walk around the corner and get a slice of pizza for $1. We were right down the block from Main Street in Bayonne. Childhood was awesome until things changed. I want to share a lot of stories from the good times. I remember when we moved from 40th to 30th Street in Bayonne, we had a neighbor, and we would bring out mattresses to the backyard to have wrestling matches. But as kids, you don't know that these people are protecting each other. And I remember one time I was dating a girl down the street, boyfriend and girlfriend, kissing on the cheek. And I saw the kid Lorenzo that lived upstairs from me put his hands on her. And I went, get the mattresses! And like everybody on the block knew what that meant. And I fucked Lorenzo up. And me and him, oh my God, we feuded. He was the son of the landlord. And like the landlord and my dad hated each other. So then we're like Laertes and Hamlet ready to fight. Then my mom got sick. And things started to change. We moved from Bayonne to Paterson, New Jersey. And if you don't know about Paterson, it's rough. It's the ghetto. There's no really other way around it. Patterson, Passaic, Clifton, all those areas are ghetto. It's I don't say that as a word against the people in the area. I say that word as a representation of what ghettos are, places that people are marginalized to and resources aren't sent to. So I went from being in like a normal, we were probably middle lower class or like upper lower class. We weren't even middle class, but there was some sense of normalcy. And then going to the inner city where I'm the only white kid in my school, it was a culture shock. That shit was rough. And where I was in Bayonne, it was a diverse area. Middle Eastern, Spanish, Black, White, Greek, Italian, and Irish, because back then, like, those were separate cultures. It wasn't just white people, it was like the Italians and the Irish. So I never had any racially conceived notions. And then I was getting attacked for being white. And that was rough. That was a hard time for me. I've come to realize that time where I was in foster care, it was like 2nd to 5th grade, shaped everything for me. I'm not going to share everything I went through there, but it's a system that doesn't promote accountability in the way children are treated. And there was some abuse within the foster home that I went through, and then also being a white kid in a school, and everybody knows you're a foster kid. So I was a target. I made friends because I was me, and I drop me anywhere and I'll make friends. But I was getting fucked up by like 5th, 6th, 7th graders when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade. Groups of kids beating my ass. It got to a point where some teachers would take me to the edge of the school property so that when the bell rang, I could get a running start. That shit was hard. And eventually it got to a point where only the older kids were beating me up. I was kind of cool with everybody my age. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that part of my past. The me in school at that time. I went from that honor roll, highly gifted kid I was talking about earlier to I was getting C's, D's, and F's and getting in fights all of the time. And nobody ever thought to like put me in counseling or anything or give me some kind of resource. I was just a kid in the city getting fucked up by life. And my sister was also in the same city as me. She ended up getting taken to live with the woman we call grandma before I did. After a few months, I joined her up there, and we lived there for a summer. So I met all of the kids my age. But then at the end of the summer, we went back to the ghetto because the woman grandma we lived with had some trashy family who like accused her of beating us so that she would lose us. And so it was like going away for summer vacation and then getting ripped back to the reality of the ghetto. And I didn't go to the same house. I went to the house of the sister of the woman I used to live with. So there was a through line for that trauma and abuse. And my mom was sick the entire time I was in foster care. So, like, visitations with my parents were my mom is, like, really, really sick. My dad is trying his best. And I'm a naive kid. And I don't know what it all means. I don't realize my mom's on drugs. But my sister does, because my sister, she was the older sibling. She didn't have the gift of the naive like side that I had. She knew what a lot of it meant. And getting to move in with grandma saved my life. I was trying to join gangs. I won't say the names of the gang because it's not important. But that's what I was looking for. I was looking for somewhere to fit in because I had nowhere and I was sick of being a target. And if I didn't leave the inner city when I did, maybe I would have succeeded and joined a gang and probably would have died. But then I go to grandma. I move in with grandma and it's 6th grade. And well, I moved in right at the end of 5th grade. Like the final few weeks of 5th grade, I show up to school and everybody's like, who the fuck's that guy? And the kids that lived in my development knew who I was, so I had some friends. But this is another version, like part of my story that is culture shock. So I was in the inner city where I'm shopping at Foreman Mills. I'm wearing Echo, Fat Farm, Anichi. I'm wearing Tim's. I've got baggy boots on. Christ, I was wearing do-rags at times because my friends would give them to me and be like, yo, wear this. As like I'm the white guy, and look, he's wearing a do-rag. So now I go from Passaic, Martin Luther King number 6 school, to a place that is actually called White Township. It didn't feel real when I moved there. Like, you could skip school in the city and go anywhere, but in White Township, the only place you could go if you skipped school was like a cow farm. Like, there was nothing there. And that was, Jesus, that was a culture shock. I'm like this hard-ass kid who had to fight for a few years and got jumped regularly. And now I'm in this like all white kid school again where there aren't really a ton of fights and like it's White Township and I'm dressed like I'm fresh out of the hood. It was like a sitcom. Like it was literally like a TV series. And that started, well, the crazy part is in the summer between 5th and 6th grade, my mom passed away. August 11th, 2005. And they drove us from White Township to Patterson to go to this crusty old DIFUS building to be told this. And when they tell us, I'm a child, it doesn't it doesn't click mentally. I literally was like, oh, okay, can we go back now? I was hanging out with my friends. Like, it didn't click. My mom had been so sick for so long. I don't think the difference between incredibly sick and death hit. And because I was a child, my mind probably protected me in that way. And a couple weeks later, I have to go back to school for 6th grade and act normal. 6th grade was probably the worst year of my life in the way that I acted. I was in a lot of fights. I started a lot of problems at school. I was acting out. I was lashing out. And that was right when I've gotten a one fight too many, and they forced me to audition for the musical. They knew that I was a class clown. And I am so lucky for John Idenden, Mr. I, and Miss Heilman, the principal, putting me in theater and giving me an outlet. They very easily could have just wiped their hands of me. I was some pissed off kid from the inner city who was swinging at everybody. But they wanted to help me. I think a lot of the teachers who had capacities for empathy helped me and wanted to help me because they saw a good kid in there. And I'm so thankful for them. After 6th grade, and finding theater, well, it would have been 7th grade that I started the theater. So all of 6th grade is like this year where I'm lashing out. And then I find theater. And it's everything for me. I've talked a lot about my theater time, so I'm not going to go back there. But 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, beyond the traumatic kid, it was a sense of normalcy. My grandma told me as I got older that when I got out of the inner city, she more desperately than anything wanted me to have a normal life. She wanted things to feel normal for me and my sister again in a way that they hadn't in a long time. And my grandma passed a few years ago. And that hurt a lot. That woman gave everything for me and my sister. She took in fosters for years, and me and Amanda were the last fosters she ever took in. And while I was there, we connected on such a real level. She was the angel that took over when my mom passed. Grandma Joyce Lyon saved my life. She was the grandma that everybody knew. She was the grandma where in my friends' homes and in my sister's friends' homes, they called her grandma, not their grandparents. She was grandma to an entire town. She was a legend. My sister's friends would come around and they'd be like punk rock kids like George O'Lear or the Pinkertons, and my grandma would just call them fuck asses and shitheads, and she was a legend. Everybody loved her, even if she was roasting them. My friends often came over to hear her roast me. She cooked dinner for us every night, despite both of her replaced knees failing. She continued working when she should have retired for her own health, but she continued working to support me and Amanda. Whatever I achieve in life is in honor of my grandma and my mother. Those two women. The fact that I got two of them in my life, I'm incredibly lucky. When I was in middle school, I had 3 best friends. We lived in Colby Court. It was a development, like a 60 house little development. And it was me, my best friend was Mike Walsh, Tyler Oakes, and Ross Clark. We were the Colby Court 4. Mike, me and him were troublemakers like you can't even imagine. We were Channing Tatum, and Jonah Hill before they were cool doing it. He was the tall, buff football player, and I was the fat, goofy sidekick. We had similar dads. His dad was also like a drinker and a Harley dad, just like mine. We had a lot of things in common. Older sister. He was my brother. Same with Ross and Tyler. God, I'm assuming everybody had like a crew in middle school. We'd play Halo 2 together. We'd play Call of Duty. We'd play Super Smash Bros. Ross had a pool table in his basement. Colby Court had a basketball court we played at a lot. We played football a lot, and like slammed into people's houses and got in trouble. We were the typical kids in the neighborhood. That group meant so much to me at that time. I didn't have friends when I was in foster care outside of class. I had friends in class that were nice to me, but I didn't have friends that I went outside to hang out with like kids do. So those guys, whether it was playing in the basement, drinking Mountain Dew while we played Smash Bros. And Halo, or waiting until it was dark out to all sneak out so we could play Manhunt. Those were the days, man. Grandma gave me the normal life she wanted to give me. That time when I moved in with Grandma was when I became the person I am now in a lot of ways. I didn't watch sports like I do now when I was a kid. I watched them for fun. And being in Jersey, you just kind of had to go down the list. Knicks or Nets, Giants or Jets, Yankees or Mets. And as a kid, I ended up siding mostly with what my dad liked. But when I moved in with Grandma in 2006, video games really blew up. And my mom and dad bought me an Xbox console. And I would buy every sports game every year. Madden, NBA, MLB. Those are the big three. I never bought NHL or FIFA. But I knew every player on every roster, almost like a savant. I could tell you their rating, their position, and where they were on the depth chart. It was, I don't know if it was actually this or it's the way I've imagined it. When I was in foster care, I lost access to everything for a few years. I wasn't keeping up with sports, wasn't keeping up with what movies were out, wasn't keeping up with wrestling, really. I kept up a little bit because there was a TV in my room in my foster home that it was one of those old TVs, you had to tune it. So sometimes I'd get to watch it on a really staticky TV. But when I moved in with Grandma, it was like trying to make up for lost time. I just started playing sports video games, playing all of the wrestling video games I could. It was like making up for lost time, but also just having times to have hobbies like video games and doing after school sports and stuff. I got to be a kid, whereas I didn't before then. Middle school was unforgettable. To the teachers that I didn't know were helping me, thank you. Middle school, I found papers in my adulthood that I kept, that my grandma had kept, that revealed to me that the teacher's aide in class was there for me, whereas I always thought somebody else in the class was the reason the aide was there. They were there for me. And that kind of recontextualized the way I perceived my childhood, that I was the person getting aid when I never knew I was the person getting aid. It's been hard for me. My ADHD diagnosis has come in the last year. And recontextualizing my life has been eye-opening, but also difficult. Just wondering, damn, what if I knew I had ADHD my whole life? Would I have graduated college because I knew how to learn with my disability? But then I also know that with me personally, it's hard to delineate the lines between ADHD and that and my trauma. And it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, which came first, the trauma or the I lost my train of thought. That's all right, but middle school allowed me to be a kid in a way that I hadn't been allowed to be in a long time. And I had that core group of best friends. And then I went to high school, and my grandma didn't let me go to school with all of my friends. She made me go to the tech school. And when I went for my interview, I was going to bomb it so I could go to Belvedere. And my grandma pulls me aside right before we walk into the meeting and goes, "If you don't get in here, you're going to an all boys school." And I was far too interested in girls back then for that to be a thing. So obviously, I nailed my interview and got into Warren Tech. And I'm so grateful I did. My God, the stuff some of my friends got into when they got to high school wouldn't have gone well for me. And Warren Tech, I am so lucky that I always went to small schools, because when I went to college and it was a big school and there was no personal help, I failed. I flunked out. I got like 108 credits done and couldn't finish out my degree. But in high school, because it was a small school and I only had 100 kids in my class, I could always get the attention I needed. And the teachers in that school kind of formed like a protective shell around me. I got treated so well in that school by my teachers. Miss Connolly, Coach Bankaser, Miss Labalarte, Miss Slowick, Mr. Muller. I had so many people, Slowick if I didn't say Slowick, Mr. P. So many people that gave me the extra nurturing I needed. If I didn't go to that school, I don't know where I'd be now. I probably would have given up acting. I tried to give up acting in high school because I didn't like being called gay. Now I'm out as pansexual, and it's probably, I was so against it because I knew I wasn't straight, but I didn't know how to come to grips with that. So I kept trying to switch out of theater, and thankfully nobody let that happen. High school was, for a long time, I was afraid I peaked in high school, that life would never get better than that. And then college was a lot better than high school. But high school, I kind of had a perfect experience. My sister was, oh shit, my lights went out. My lights went out. Sorry about that. But when I got there as a freshman, my sister was already a junior, and she was really popular as a class clown. And I basically came in and was like ushered into the school by her. I had an in where a lot of freshmen, you don't talk to upperclassmen because you don't know anybody. I had a sister who was popular and like in with cool kids. So I really quickly was in with upperclassmen and stuff. So I was lucky for that. I kind of inherited the crown from my sister. And I think I was one of the more popular kids in school, but I also know I was annoying because I had ADHD and I was manic, and like I was calling me a nuisance in the classroom setting doesn't even do it justice. It got to the point where teachers would just let me leave knowing I was going to hall roam because then they could actually teach. And I don't know, I look back at high school and I had friends every year. I was cool with my freshman year was the most I ever dealt with bullying in high school because there were some dumb redneck upperclassmen that didn't like me, that I was a loudmouth freshman and that I was like hitting on junior and senior girls. So I took some, there was this one dumb redneck who like pulled me into a back closet in a teacher's room to try to rough me up, and I just kneed him in the balls and fucking ran out. But high school, especially after my freshman year when I was like no longer afraid of being in theater, I was proud of being in theater. Um at the beginning of my high school time, I don't think a lot of teachers knew if I would graduate. And then by the end of it, I was in honors classes again, like I was way back when I was making honor roll. Well, junior and senior year, I was back in honors classes, and I was in the play, and I was on the sports teams, and I was elected the secretary of the school, where my one of my best friends at the time, Louis Amora, was the president, and our good friend Nia was vice president. So like we were the school, we were the faces of the school, and like I don't know, it's just really it's wild sitting here telling stories about my life and realizing all that I overcame to make it to these moments. Middle school and the beginning of high school, I was so problematic. Most people thought I'd end up in a behavioral school. But when I had teachers give me a chance and try to learn the things that I needed help with, I blossomed. And junior year was the first year things really, I was in history honors, English honors. I got the Cowardly Lion. It was my first big part. I made the baseball team and the basketball team for the first time. My grades were so bad in the years prior that I couldn't even make the teams. Where like I made the teams and they had to kick me off because my grades were so bad. And it was only ever English, or no, it was never English. It was science and math I sucked at. But it's just like wild sitting here reflecting on my time, because sitting here from the future when I know all the stuff I've been through, it was all supposed to be the peak and it got better. And I'm in a place right now in my life where I'm wondering if it's going to get better. And I'm telling you stories about how it got better. I'm so lucky that I've had the help I've had in my life. I've had the good people I've had in my life. Another one of my best friends from back then, Jamie Ash. I was really lucky where my closest friends, their parents would always take me in, like more than a friend of their son. I think the mothers and the fathers knew that I needed guidance, and I always got that. Mike Walsh and his family, Ross Clark and his family, Jamie Ash and his family, Justin Monzak and his family, making space for me when they didn't have to. Ray Nunez, my brother, my best friend, his family. Taryn, one of my best friends, and her family. I think I'm so capable of empathy and compassion because to understand my story, you have to be capable of it. You can't listen to my story and not be capable of empathy or compassion or understanding, because there are so many moments in my life that should have been it. I could have died in the inner city when I was trying to join gangs. I could have died when the foster brothers in my homes had guns and I played with them. I could have died when I went swimming in the Delaware Water Gap in 6th grade and I got sucked under by the current, and Mike Walsh reached under the water and grabbed my hand and pulled me out and saved my life. I would have died at the bottom of the Delaware River. To the times worse than that, when I was an adult and didn't want to be alive anymore. I never did anything alone in life. Some people are lucky enough to where they never had to make decisions when their life was on the line. I have. I've had other people save me. It's like when people look at homeless people and judge them. I could be 2 weeks away from being homeless right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent. I think when you haven't nearly experienced homelessness, it can be hard to empathize. There are times in my life that my closest friends don't know about. When I was living in a car, because I didn't want to tell anybody I needed help, because I felt like I've already been helped so much. This has been really great today. I've tried to sit down and write a book about my life, and I don't know if I'll ever have the attention span necessary. I don't know if I'll ever actually sit down and write the book that is my life. But sitting here and doing a podcast and getting to talk, this meant a lot to me. I'm really grateful to have the ability to do this. I've been on the edge of life and death. I've been on the edge of overdose. I've been to rehab. I've been places in life that some people can't even imagine. And every day I wake up and I try. And I hope that me doing that inspires others to do it. The world we live in right now is disgusting. Morals are gone. Human decency is gone. I've cut people out of my life because there's no space for hate in any way. Damn. I feel like I've talked about a lot and also nothing. Talking about life and death and almost dying in the Delaware River really fucked me up. It makes me remember that there have been so many moments in my life where it could have ended, and it didn't. Moments where my own choices led me to the brink. But I didn't fall off the edge. And I used to think it was weak to need help. And I got to a point of feeling like I had already used all the help I would be afforded in life. Fuck that. You're not weak for needing help, and neither am I. Nobody can get through life alone, and if you are, good for you, but you don't have to. If I was alone, I'd be dead. I would have died in the Delaware River. I would have died an alcoholic before my friends helped me get to rehab. Without support, without loved ones, I'd be dead. And I don't take that for granted. Not anymore. I started recording this without a clear beginning and end, but I know that my story is worth sharing. And I know that I'm a hell of a storyteller. I think I told some good stories here today. I want to keep telling my story. So this is episode 1 of The Goose is Loose. And it's just me today. But I want this to be a consistent outlet. In the way that Stavros has Stavi's World, in the way that the guys from Are You Garbage have that podcast, Are You Garbage, I want the Goose is Loose to be my open format space where if I have my friends on, we can talk about personal stories. And then we can also talk about movies we love. We can talk about movies, music, sports, wrestling, personal life, whatever it is. I want to start telling my story, and I feel like this is step 1. So guys, if you're still here with me, hit like, comment down below. Let me know if you'd ever want to come on as a guest on The Goose is Loose. Thank you so much for being here and spending time with me today and listening to me. I can't wait to continue this and to continue sharing my story. And if you've been a part of my story and you want to come on and talk, let me know. Even if I haven't spoken to you in a minute and you're watching this, let's catch up. If you don't know who I am, and this is your first time watching a video of me, or you started watching my videos and now you're listening to this, let me know. I am here for connection. I feel like I was born in the wrong era because I'm so person to person and intercommunication between beings, and kind of feels like it's a dying thing, and I won't let it die. Not for me. So y'all, thank you for spending an hour with me today. I can't wait to keep sharing more about my life. Some episodes I'll probably go more into stories or theater or sports. Let me know what you want to hear from me. I didn't get as much into sports as I wanted to in this episode. I kind of went more on the me stuff. So maybe I'll do an episode where I fully talk about how I became such a massive sports fan. So y'all, thank you for hanging out. The Goose is out.